Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I am blessed to be with the scholars from the edge of time, Nicholas Diak and Michele Brittany. Greetings and welcome, oh scholars.
Greetings, Hercules. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm looking forward to hearing all the exciting things that both of you are doing.
Uh, well, we look forward to letting you know about that stuff.
I wish things were a bit. It's been just behind the scenes projecty stuff lately. Except our garden. Our garden is huge. We have potato plants that are that big. So I think that's exciting.
Yeah, we've been working on our garden quite a bit, and just doing weeding for another turn. Now that it's warmer here in Arizona.
Oh,
so
is it warmer?
yeah, it's warmer. Triple digits next week. So
Wow.
yeah. But yeah, do you want me to start?
Yes, I think we got some show and tell to do before we
Yeah.
launch into tonight's movie.
I love
So-
show and tell.
Oh, cool. Well, I've got a little bit. Do you want me to do my stack and then you do your stack, or how would you like to do
Yeah,
that?
let's do that. Well, instead of going
Okay.
back and forth, you have a little bit more than I do. So you ladies first.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I did go to our local bookstore, which is Barnes and Noble here in the Phoenix area, and I came across a couple of books and then a couple of magazines that I just wanted to share. The first one is The Seven Wonders of the Ancient World. I've actually started reading this. This is actually very interesting. It started with the pyramids at Giza, but it goes through each one of the ancient wonders. Very well written, there's kind of a nice poetry about Bethany Hughes' writing that I'm actually enjoying. It was published this year. She's very up to date on a lot of the archaeological type findings that have been going on, particularly in Egypt. It seems like it's constantly changing. And she has a lot of footnotes, endnotes, and things like that, as well as, I believe, some suggested readings. So if you see this in your local bookstore, I would recommend it. It is $20 retail price, but if you look around online, you might be able to find it for a little bit less. So that's a nonfiction. Fiction wise, I'm sorry, I was drawn by the cover. I'm going to be honest. It's Egyptian, and it's Nefertari, Aurora, the Pharaoh's daughter. I don't know anything about this author. So I am looking forward to seeing more about it, whether it's a good book, good fiction book or not. The other two items are magazines that I came across. So I always recommend both of these. A third one I would recommend is KMT. And of course, these are related to ancient Egypt as well as ancient history. So if you can't find KMT, and I actually think maybe they're not printing anymore. They did have some issues during the pandemic and being able to continue printing their magazines. So I do have, Nick is actually looking that up while I do some more talking. So if it's not available as a print issue, then it'll definitely be available, should be available in a digital format. The next one is Ancient Egypt.
Became defunct with its winter 2022-23 issue, partly due to rising costs of mailing stamps.
Okay, so that explains why I didn't find it recently, is that it is unfortunately a defunct magazine, which is kind of sad because it was totally focused on all the ancient Egyptian stuff. Pretty well done. And then also always had like a kind of a kids section too, to help younger readers become more understanding of ancient Egypt and, the various gods and culture and things like that. But next, I would say Ancient Egypt is not a bad magazine to take a look at. I do collect this every time I go to the bookstore. And the other one is Ancient History. which is also nonfiction. And this covers all the ancient civilizations. So you're going to get a bit of Egypt, Rome, Greece, and other ancient civilizations out there, usually in a themed. So this one happens to be about hunting and hunters in antiquity. It kind of goes through and talks, like, it'll have a section where an article on Egypt, an article on Rome, an article on Greece, all related to that topic. So that's a I would suggest a pretty good one too. My last one is kind of one one from the vault. I actually had the receipt still in the book, and I bought this book back in 1998 at a Barnes and actually at a Borders. They no longer exist. But it is the Memoirs of Cleopatra, written by Margaret George. And this is a historical fiction, but she's done a lot of research. So when you're reading it, you really kind of get immersed and you feel like you're actually there. And I'm really enjoying it. This kind of comes on the heels of watching the Alexander documentary. And so I definitely am enjoying this, and further along than I was the first time through. So I would say I would strongly suggest having a read of that. One that I don't have on my pile, but if you like Norman Mailer, he wrote, I think it's Ancient Evenings.
Ancient Evenings, yes.
Yes, and that's another very good book. A little bit on the slower pace, but I think also a good read as well. So that's kind of, updating my collection and kind of what I'm reading currently in the evenings before I go to bed. So I'll pass it over to you, Nick.
Well, I don't have as much for show and tell. So we'll start with, bought this one off eBay, Mayan revival style. It's about Mayan and Aztec architecture that was coming in vogue in the 1920s. I got this just because, if y'all remember last year, we did a talk on the movie Secret of the Incas with Charlton Heston, and it's been on my to-do list to turn that to an article. And even though that's Inca and this is about Mayan and, more around the Mexican, Mesoamerican area, I still think there's probably some stuff I can draw. So this draw through it for that article. So that's why I got that. So I haven't read it yet, but there's nice pictures. This is a way out of print book. So there's no other real book out there about the 1920s of bringing that architecture style and put it into new stuff. It's kind of precursor to like tiki stuff and Polynesian stuff when that started to come in vogue into our architecture. So we'll see. So excited to look at that. Next is a sword and sorcery movie called The Slave and the Sorcerer. Haven't watched it yet. This was a Kickstarted movie. What's that?
I've never heard of that one. That's pretty odd for me not to have heard of it.
Yeah, just came out. Like I literally got this in the mail maybe within the past 7 days, and it was made in Britain, I think. And yeah, it was funded through Kickstarter. So it was one of those, chip in, $20-$30, and when it's all said and done, you get a movie from it. So
And it's signed.
Yeah, it's signed by the director. I'm a sucker for that type of stuff. But it's barbarian guys with swords doing, fighting wizard, basically very 80s looking. So our homage to 80s looking. So I mean, even the font on Slave and the Sorcerer makes me think of the font for
Sword.
Yeah. So I think it's all kind of an homage to that. So potential future episode talking about this film.
Mm-hmm.
And then one more film also have not seen, but I'm double excited to watch this. It's called She is Conan. And it's a retelling of Conan kind of with a female barbarian instead that like encounters different iterations of her through different time periods and stuff. and I guess it's very experimental, surreal, very French. I saw a trailer and I'm like, I gotta watch that. So she is Conan, 2 N's. I think that might be on that. This should probably be on your to watch pile too, because this is definitely out there. So definitely probably a future episode to talk about this film. I got a really good feeling about it.
Are they available on Amazon, these movies?
Yeah, I bought this one from Amazon.
And it's called She is Conan with 2 N's?
Yeah, yeah, I got this off Amazon. This was Kickstarted, but I'm pretty sure if it's not on Amazon, you could probably find the website for it to order copies from. I'll have to look that up. So, I mean, people want to get their movies out there, so it's probably streaming somewhere as well. But yeah, this was total Amazon purchase. See if I can get that in there without the like. But yeah, Lady Conan, that's so cool. So I'm excited to watch that one.
I'm excited now also. The books that Michele introduced, I looked at them last time I went to Barnes and Noble, both books, the Egyptian one and the one on the Ancient Wonders. And those two, I definitely have to look for them now.
Yeah, definitely. Or if you wait long enough, you might get inherit them. You know,
I made it sort of
when I'm done reading them.
I actually have a lot of Egyptian books. I'm trying to. We had a store that sold books, so most of our inventory is in the house. A lot of it got destroyed in the flood, but it doesn't seem to have made a dent in it. So when I go through the Egyptian books, you'll probably be inheriting all of those if you're interested in them.
That sounds good. And I might have a few, but I'm always happy to do some book swapping with you, Hercules.
Me too. Awesome.
Well, I think that's it for show and tell. So
yeah.
Time for tonight's movie. All right. So we are back on track with our Bella Cortez movie retrospective. And tonight we're talking about her movie, sci-fi invasion classic 50s. Oh, that's not what the movie's called. That's just what. I don't have this on a singular DVD, but we're going to talk about Giant of Metropolis. And it's one of those, movies that's like pseudo public domain. So it's, in these value packs. We watched it on Tubi because I was too lazy to go grab this. I could have grabbed this and not have commercials, or we could have watched Tubi with commercials. And it was a bad call. It was a bad call, Ripley. Bad call. But watch the.
But if you don't have this, then definitely watch it on Tubi.
I think like Retro Media or something may have put like a single disc version of it out that's actually better quality. I'm not 100% sure, but it's unfortunately one of those, American imports back in the 60s that's severely cropped, dubbed, looks like 3 generations of VHS tape recording, but what can you do? So
on Tubi it wasn't a horrible copy. Definitely could watch it without feeling like you're missing half of it because of the pan and scan or being cut off the sides.
Keep that in mind. I've been rethinking the ending of this film, and I'm wondering if something didn't pan over all the way because it was cropped.
Oh, that could be.
That changes the entire movie.
We will talk about that. Keep that in mind. Pin that one.
I will keep that in mind.
About that soon.
Sorry, itch my nose. I got cat hair coming in. All right, so Giant of Metropolis. In the year 20,000 BC, Atlantis is a continent with an advanced civilization with the Great Metropolis as its capital city. The city is ruled by a king named Yotar, who governs by heavily relying on science. The science of Metropolis is bordering on going too far, tampering with the essence of life and death. Strongman Obro arrives on Atlantis with a singular mission to tell Yotar that the path he is on will lead to ruin and destruction. After encountering a magnetic death ray that vaporizes the flesh of his companions, Obro is captured by the soldiers of Metropolis and brought forth to Yotar. Obro gives his speech, which is dismissed by Yotar. Instead, Yotar sees a new subject matter that will benefit his various science projects, including one that involves making his young son, Elmos, immortal and powerful. Obro isn't the only person telling Yotar that he is mad, blinded by science, pun intended, and will soon be undone by it. Queen Texan, an underground seer, a top guard named Egon, all try to talk sense into Yotar, but to no avail. Yotar puts Obro through a series of fights and tests, a bone-wielding caveman, a squadron of imps, and even laser spotlights that trap and freeze Obro. Queen Texan has other plans, though, and begins a secret coup by having Obro freed and turned into a terrorist who has a secret base under a large statue. Obro pops up out of the secret access under the statue's foot and proceeds to slay guards and soldiers. Yotar suspects Texan behind this treachery, but she poisons herself rather than stay with her evil husband. Yotar's daughter, through a different paramour, Princess Mercedes, witnesses all this, and she flees. As she is apprehended by the guards, Obro arrives and saves the day. The two quickly fall in love. Aside from losing men to Obro, other things have not been going well for Yotar. Cosmic events are upsetting the solar system, which will negatively impact his experiments. And the volcano under Atlantis is about ready to erupt. But instead of focusing on his people, Yotar steadfastly believes science will save them all. He orders his son to be put through experiments which fail and leave the boy's body severely weakened, bordering on death's door. Obro infiltrates Yotar's palace and is about to assassinate him, but Princess Mercedes, not S on the end, intervenes. Instead, the duo is captured. Soon, though, the volcano erupts and begins to shake the continent. Holding his weak son in his arms and seeing his empire crumble around him, Yotar has a change of heart. He has Obro and Mercedes freed, who take Yotar's son and attempt to flee Atlantis. The continent becomes heavily ravaged by storms and floods, killing many and eventually sinking the island. Obro and Mercedes seem to weather the storm, waking up on a beach. However, Yotar's son is nowhere to be seen, possibly have been consumed in the sea along with the other Atlanteans.
But that's where we think scan and pan or, cropping may have just happened to crop out the child. Maybe he didn't actually die.
So TBD, the version we watched, the way it's cropped, that kid is a goner. So
Yeah.
that's the ending I'm going with, because that suits my what the heck was this movie sentiments. So with that in mind, Michele, fellow scholar from the Edge of Time, what was your overall feeling of Giant of Metropolis?
I think I was expecting a bit more than what was delivered. I did overall feel that it was a bit long, and that there was some padding and some slow spaces in there. But there were some saving things about it. Particularly, I thought the sets were quite well done. And I do feel that some of the characters were rather interesting, and where they at first seem like they're stereotypical, they turn out to actually have other motivations and other desires that are communicated through the film. So I don't heavily recommend it, but if you're looking to be more knowledgeable about the early 60s and the early, kind of the late period of the Peplum films, but if you're interested in Gordon Mitchell and some of his early work, this is definitely a movie to watch. Obviously, Bella Cortez, although unfortunately I would not recommend this film. If you're really a big fan, then yeah, of course you want to watch it, but she's not in it a lot. And she I think again I go back to the Vulcan film that we discussed a couple of months ago as being definitely superior as far as her being able to have an opportunity to really, shine as an actor in, these early films. So that's kind of my overarching, and we'll get into specifics, but Nick, what about you, fellow scholar on that edge of time? What was your initial thoughts?
I'm a bit more forgiven. I actually went into the film with high hopes, like this was going to be kind of like a secret treasure. Like, oh my God, this is awesome. This is like way better than it has any right to be. And it's a little sad it wasn't. It is a weird film. It is very idiosyncratic. And because I couldn't take my eyes off it, because it was definitely a hodgepodge of genres, of acting, of sets, it was definitely Michele and I were talking about it offline, and the idea was maybe they just went to a warehouse and saw all this stuff laying around and saying, can we just throw all that into a movie? So it has that feeling of this is a grab a little bit of everything and slam it together type film, because it is sword and sandal, but it is also sci-fi. It's also very serial, pulpy, a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of disaster film. It has like a lot of stuff going on and not juggled the best. So, but it is so offbeat. I was just like glued to it because it kept going in very unexpected directions.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we'll start with some observations. Why some of this was very unexpected. I'll start with the main character you think would be our strongman, Obar, Gordon Mitchell. Obro. You think because he's the hero, he would be our main like protagonist, our hero. We see the world through his eyes, but that's actually not the case. The movie really focuses on the main villain. We see much through Yotar's perspective of, I don't want to say why he does what he does, because that's still kind of muddled, but he's a very Darth Vader-like character, where you think of like Anakin Skywalker, like in the prequel films, where he's like, oh, I gotta save Padme from dying, so I better turn to the dark side so I can have all this power to save her, and then he becomes evil that way. There is that kind of cloud of, I'm a bad guy, but I'm serving a greater good. In this case, my city, my son, and all that stuff, but I'm doing it through evil means. There's a hint of that there. I don't think it's executed as good as maybe it could have been, but it is interesting that really the movie is from more or less the bad guy's perspective. He has the most screen time. We hear his musings a bit more. Even though he's one-dimensional up until the very end, it's just interesting that it's a bad guy centric film.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would add that, his motivation isn't like he wants to take over the world, or that there's a certain greed about him. It's really comes down to him being a protective father,
overprotective
father for his son, but also I think protective of his people as well, because he wants to guarantee kind of the continued connection of knowledge, because he's trying to transfer kind of the knowledge from his father to his son, so that there is a continuity, that death doesn't break that link, which is rather interesting and is different from what we've seen in other films of this ilk.
It's definitely of the weird science type genre of stuff, the death rays and outlandish, devices and stuff. It has that kind of feeling. Yeah, brain transplants in a Peplum film.
Yeah, and reviving his father. Like, I think his father was actually dead, but through science, they're able to revive the father. And, so we're this constant theme of, science versus nature, human nature, the natural flow of the cycle of life is disrupted and evaluated, and is kind of, it is a motivation for both Yotar and Obro, because there's a reason that Obro goes to Atlantis, and that is his big motivation is to go there and warn Yotar that he's messing with nature through his science experiments, and he needs to stop. And of course, this is the message that you hear from Obro, the father, there's this old man in a cave, which I equate to an oracle. So all these people are trying to tell him, and warn him.
Everyone is.
Yeah, and yet he won't listen. And I think that's kind of indicative when you have a very overprotective parent. They kind of get focused and they become kind of irrational.
And there's probably a little bit of narcissism in that too, and also living yourself out to your kid.
Yeah.
And we're making it sound a bit more deep than it is, because this is all stuff that we're pulling from it, but I think a different director of more capable hands would explore this stuff a bit more, because unfortunately, Yotar, he is a one-trick pony through the entire film until the very end, where he's like, oh my God, my city's crumbling, my son's dying, free him. But at that point, it's like too late. So he doesn't even get like a redemption arc. It's not like, Darth Vader at the end where he, redeems himself, throws the Emperor into the Death Star core to save his son. That doesn't happen, because the movie still, Atlantis crumbles and everyone dies, including his son. So, he didn't even have to redeem himself. The outcome would have been the same regardless. So I think if you made the character a bit more multifaceted, maybe, seeing more of his fall from logic to embracing science blindly, or other stuff,
or more of an arc in the intro crawl of text talks about right at the end about how love is important, and it is actually through him listening, or kind of like secretly listening into Obro and Princess Mercedes talk about how they love each other, even though it's been a short period of time. They feel love for each other and for other things, and that's the turning point, I think, for Yotar, and why he decides to give up his son, hand over his son to the guards, and say, please go and release Obro and the princess, and make sure my son is saved. Because he knows that, he can't save his son because he can't get away from the people that are upset that all this is happening. And, I would say, if anything, maybe he kind of realizes that he's the cause at the end. But again, taking a little bit of some, extra reading of it, that I'm applying to it than necessarily is actually there. But I think if there had been just a little bit more, or maybe he kind of understood what love meant, and because through the entire thing, it's all about science. He doesn't, if he loves his wife, I mean, it's really twisted and very weird. And whether he loves his son or not, I'm assuming he does, but it's like not a love that you would, that's defined in a more traditional sense.
Well, the thing about him loving his son, a scene that stood out for me, is he takes his son, and the son's all excited because the son thinks he's going to go outside and see the sky and all this other stuff, because he's been prisoner in his room forever. But his dad instead takes him to the operating room to be tested on. But what's really creepy about it is he leaves. He doesn't even want to stay in the same room, because he can't watch his own son go through, he's going to be blasted with radiation, even 20,000 years ago, being blasted by 20,000 BC. Yeah. Getting blasted by radiation hurts, chemotherapy hurts. So the fact that he leaves, he won't even be there, I think is a little bit kind of telling on, does he love his son or not? Or maybe he might be wrestling with it. I don't know.
I mean, I guess you could read that he's wrestling with what he's putting his son through.
Maybe he
you
is
know,
feeling
but-
shame.
Or, that idea that, sacrifice of a few to save the many. But unfortunately, that's too little too late. What he should have done is, not continue the path of science. And even that, we don't understand the full scope of his science experiments and how they're impacting, the island of Atlantis. So, it's a little bit of a blip in the rationality of the story, I would say.
Now, I want to turn back to character of Oboro, because one of the things you said is like his mission is, to travel to Atlantis and tell Yotar and knock it off. And the thing is, our main hero or muscle-bound hero, he accomplishes that objective like within
the first act. He really does.
5 minutes into the film.
Yeah.
And so, and the weird thing is his quest is effectively over, and he even says as much. He's like, take me away, I'm done. I said what I needed to say. So in theory, his quest is over. Which is a little different than a normal strongman, as when normally at that point in the movie is when their quest begins. And so at that point, Oboro, compared to other strongman characters, the Hercules, the Machistes, and other stuff, I don't want to say he's like a bad strongman character. He's not the guy from Iron Master. That is the bottom of the barrel. I actually think Gordon Mitchell looks the part, and he's been in other films where he's a much better strongman, but he's just different, that he's not commanding in this film. And I don't mean that presence wise. I mean that in other strongman films, everyone follows behind the strongman. The strongman becomes the leader. The Hercules becomes the leader of the slave revolt. The Ursus becomes the leader of overthrowing the whatever. But Obar in this is reactionary. He's not leading. He's actually being told what to do, and he's kind of at the mercy of other people. He's at first under the mercy of Yotar as his prisoner, being put through an arena and various tortures, and then after that he's under technically the queen, but the queen through a guard, a terrorist. They even call him a terrorist. And so he's only acting under, loose instruction, just to, pop out every now and then, slay a couple guards and pop back in. He
becomes kind of a mercenary in a way. He didn't want to kill. Oh yeah, this was one of the things, is that, the guard, the Queen's Guard or whatever, tells him that he needs to be able to kill the King's Guards. And he's like, well, that's not what I came here for. And, he's like, says, I don't want to kill. But in the next scene, he's been killing people. And I even,
is one of the most bloodthirsty people.
Yeah, and I even remarked to Nick as we're watching, I'm like, well, he didn't seem to have too much problem with switching over to killing people. But it is interesting that he doesn't seem to have agency after that first act, and that he does become a secondary character. A lot of the focus is on Yotar, and I think that's because maybe the writers are like, oh crap, he fulfilled his mission in the first act. What are we going to do with him now through the rest? And I don't think that, I think Gordon Mitchell had the physique, definitely bodybuilder. There are several times through, the various fights and stuff. I mean, you really see his body is on display. I mean, to the point that you actually see the veins in his arms, and that's not typical. I think back to like Mark Forrest, some of the Steve Reeves films and things like that. Pretty smooth. They're doing their muscle stuff, but he was like really on display. He's really tensioning up and really putting his body on display. That I think that comes from professional bodybuilding, probably competitions and things like that. So one of the things that I kept thinking about, and maybe Nick, through your studies, you'd be able to answer this, but I kept thinking about how him as a strong man, who was the audience during this time? Because the women are not in the film that much. So is it, I always think back to the male gaze, and the male gaze always, looking for that beautiful woman in, in the movie, the damsel in distress or the femme fatale. But the gaze is on Gordon Mitchell, as the strong man. And I mean, he's in, the little Greek skirt and things like that throughout the entire movie. So you do get to see him at various poses and things like that. But I'm like, would men be impacted? Would his body be on display for men, like
Oh yeah.
as an image of, oh, I want to be like him?
Oh yeah. Project yourself into the bodybuilders back then.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But side note, this movie is a lot less sexless. Is that what I'm going for? Than other sword and sandal films. Like there is the obligatory, dance sequence. This one has a Bella Cortez in it as well. But compare that to her like dance sequence in Vulcan Son of Jupiter. It's way more chaste. She has two other dance partners and they kind of move like robots and mannequins instead of more sexual belly dancing. So this movie definitely tones back its sexual implied sexual content.
I would definitely have to, I would have to respectfully disagree about that, because I do feel like the dance sequence that Bella does with the two other dancers is very sexual, highly charged sexually, in their movements, the fact that they are engaging in the same movements at times. They're very, very close together, the way their bodies move. I would definitely, I even said to Nick, I'm like, oh, well, this is a menage a trois going on the film because of the way the movement is and the way she keeps going to each dancer. One is a light colored dancer. The other is an African American, well, an African Black man, very tribal dress. And I thought it was highly sexualized, the three of them dancing together, which was, and then that precedes the coupling of, I think it was all woman and man to coupling after that.
Oh yeah, they all walk together.
Yeah,
See,
but
I see that.
Yeah,
but I also go, this is a science-based world. I saw it as very robotic, very craft worky, I guess. And also that they're very clothed as well, instead of, body on display like you would have, your veils, your midriff and all that stuff. Bella Cortez's character is very clothed in it. So
well, the men were not.
that's true.
So that's why I was like, no, I think it's there's some definite sexual concepts there. There's also later in the film where Bella and Gordon Mitchell's characters get together. They kiss, and then it's like,
I forgot that.
It's like
cut.
Later
Yeah.
cut, and she's out on the bed. He is reclining next to her. They're very close. Obviously, stuff was going on. I think his skirt's different after that too.
I think I'm going. It's less sexualized because of costuming then, because okay, side note, the costumes in this movie are terrible. All the Atlanteans, if you put buggly eyes on them, would look exactly like the aliens from the Peter Graves film Killers from Space. But back to Oberon real quick. Aside from his quest ends, and then he surprisingly, where a Herculean character has a lot of agency, he has none. The other kind of weird thing about him is in all his combat, in order for him to defeat someone, he has to use a weapon, which normally when I make note of that. Usually a melee weapon in a sword and sandal film is, representative of, an extension of the strongman's strength, but, they're disposable. Ultimately, the strongman will win with his own stuff. And that's fine, but I think in a movie like this, that's very heavily focused on science and tech, the last and the message is love / human nature / humans are the ones that persevere. I think giving your character a main weapon kind of dampens that impact, because now they're using tech and stuff. So like, in order to fight the caveman, he has to use the bone against him, which in a weird sort of way, there's a big bone club. He has to defeat him with a bone club, which is kind of very 2001 Space Odyssey in a way. But like, in order to kill the soldiers, he doesn't wrestle with the soldiers. He flings this ball around him. In order, he's about to assassinate Yotar. He has like an electro dagger branch thing. So it's weird that they're placing this emphasis on Gordon Mitchell having a lot of vitality, a lot of endurance, but like combat wise, in order for him to be successful, he has to have a weapon, which is a lot different than other sword and sandal films, and maybe out of place in a movie that's trying to make a commentary on, body / nature versus tech / science, which is at odds.
Yeah, it definitely at odds and anachronistic, because you do think that if this is a society with so much tech, why do they still, in ways, low tech? Go for it.
We forgot the most important thing. Yeah. There's no guns, no death rays or anything like that. No pew pew pews. Their weapon of preference is a lobster claw and a spear.
Which, I'm sorry, that's kind of low tech. I mean, it does open and close, but
like
I mean,
the doors of the. This is one of those movies where the doors open like this. So but behind the scene is like a person on this side and a person on that side just pulling rope. Yeah. So their spear technology is based on the same principles. But yes, there are legit scenes of like people going as crab claw spears come after them.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of low tech in that way, but good point about, again, looking at that nature versus science, and the fact that, in more maybe experienced hands with storytelling, they would have been able to, get past that kind of inconsistency in the theme that they're exploring, because there are some inconsistencies in this film.
This movie needed a different director for sure. And I'm biased, but I'm going to put him forth anyway. Like, I think Antonio Margheriti would have nailed this film, because at this time, he's doing space operas. He's got sci-fi down. His model work is top notch. He can realize these fantastic, like, high-tech cities and stuff. And compare like the shots of Metropolis in this film, which, okay, let me back up a little bit. You think of the word Metropolis, you're going to think back to the classic 1920s German silent film Metropolis. So that's 40 years before this film, and the city looks great in that. Even though it's miniatures and a little kind of, just still looks fantastic. You think in 40 years you could improve on that. Not this film. There's like the shot of Metropolis is maybe like 5 building models, and it's featureless and empty, and it's a little sad.
It's meant to look futuristic, and obviously when you get the interior sets, they do not fit with what you've seen outside. What are the models? And I will say though that the interior sets are elaborate.
The ones that aren't caves.
Yeah, the ones that aren't caves, but the more, I'm going to say, public space where you see the most people and things like that, except for the second fight. Well, the 2 fights with the first monster that Obro has to fight, and then the imps.
Yeah, those are like, that's like an underground
Yeah, that's an
arena.
underground arena, and it's pretty dark and small, but otherwise the sets, I kind of feel them as kind of like an otherworldly, because they've gone through and they've blended, classical, tribal, as well as this kind of technology and science, all together to give kind of a real blended, again, using my word from before, otherworldly type of set. I was actually very much reminded of a Roger Corman film. Let's see, I've got it here. The Mask of the Red Death. Because of the kind of gothic sets, but also going in line with the costuming, which is very odd in this film, and really made me wonder, like, really, I thought that they took these costumes from other sets. And I mean, I read a review, and somebody was commenting that the costumes looks like they're right out of Planet of the Vampires, the Mario Bava film.
Bava would have made this movie a bit more surreal, but way more uniform. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It would have been in good hands with him as well.
But, think kind of that kind of abstract kind of look of sets. I definitely kept thinking about some of the early silence and how things were shot, and the fact that they're not too dissimilar as far as technique wise. But I love the sets, the ones that were really elaborate and really kind of brought in those different influences, I thought were fantastic.
Yeah, there's like some statues that look kind of Aztecian or
TV
Olmecan.
yeah.
So I guess that kind of ties into the book I showed earlier. And then there's like some bas reliefs and stuff that kind of give it a little bit of the ancient aliens vibe to it, because it's kind of just out of place. So
I'm going to avoid not.
It's not aliens.
I'm not saying it's aliens, but
yeah, the sequences that are like in the lab or like in the courtroom and stuff are elaborate, but outside that, everything's underground, which is again weird because you're in a place called Metropolis, this huge futuristic city. So why is everything taking place underground? So it gives it that kind of pulpy, mad scientist, villain, underground layer kind of approach to it, which works kind of for a character like Yotar, but it doesn't for the setting it needs to be. We're getting down to our last 10 minutes, so I do want to make sure we talk about Bella Cortez's character, because this is our retrospective of Bella Cortez's films. She wasn't used as well in this movie as she could have been. This between all the ones we've talked about, Tartars, Vulcan, and this movie's right in the middle. Vulcan, she just knocks it out the park in that one. She's given a lot to do, a lot of agency. She gets to fight, she gets to do a lot of stuff. While in Tartars, she's just the kidnapped princess, basically, of the not the Vikings, the Mongols. And that's it. She has like zero chemistry with Eric the Viking, and she's just kind of there. This movie's better than that. She just, unfortunately, the movie wants to shoehorn her into another damsel-like character.
Yeah.
But she has like a couple scenes, like, she does the kind of covert operation type stuff where she's kind of sneaking around hallways and listening on things. And she has way better chemistry with Gordon Mitchell as Orbro. Like, I can believe their love story as compared to her with Eric and the Tartars, which is this is terrible. I don't know why she falls in love with him, because the guy's a jerk. But that's the time, I guess. But the thing is her character is in a position as the princess of Yotar to do a lot more. She has access to the castle. She could do a lot more quest type stuff, I guess. But the movie is pretty adamant to shoehorn her in as a damsel, and I think that's a disservice to her, because she can do much more, and we've seen her do much more. And this movie could have used her doing much more because she would have rocked it out the park.
Yeah, she just didn't have enough agency in this film. And I really had hoped that this would be like the Vulcan film where she got to, explore her character and get out a bit more, both outside the city and just kind of outside the damsel, stereotype. And it's unfortunate because, we did really like her in Vulcan and thought that she just did a fantastic job. She was a very strong character, and and that was unique back in those days to have such a uniquely strong character kind of help lead and progress the narrative beats of the plot. So and unfortunately, she didn't even show up for I would say, the first act of the film.
Oh yeah, she's like absent the entire first act of the film. Yeah.
Yeah, and her thing is that she's under like some sort of like mind control, so she's very much her father's daughter through a good part of it. But then she realizes, she sees the truth, so to speak, and so she does want to have a life outside of Atlantis. So
all stuff that would have been awesome to explore in bigger detail.
Yeah, in bigger detail. So for as long as this film was, I think it was a 90-minute film, they did a lot of padding through it. And taking those padding spots, take them out and develop more of the characters, all of them, not just Yotar, but really kind of get into Obro and give him a new motivation, have more on her, have more about the son and kind of where he's at.
Every character is in a good position to do all that. The story is set up for that. Their positions are set up for it. They just didn't do the chess pieces right.
Yeah. I would also add a couple. Another thing that I had about this film that I didn't think do really well, and this is an unusual kind of thing to point out. Usually Foley artists are really good about kind of like putting the sound in and have it blend in. And I was telling Nick separately today that the Foley artists that did all the footsteps for the people in Atlantis, it was the same throughout, and it was loud. And I don't exactly know why that stood out so much, but it just was like it would take me out of the movie every time I heard it, and that's very unusual for me.
I don't think the Foley artists would have done that. This probably would have been the English dub of it because everyone's dubbed and re-edited. So the sound person over here probably is like, I just got that one sample and just use that. That would be my guess, is it was done on the American side of things. But still, the point, you're 100% correct. You can sound that way better.
Yeah. So that always took me out. There was one particular costume that we had to snicker every time we saw it come on the screen, because it was kind of this weird cape, but it was attached. And I mean, honestly, they look like a beetle walking around, kind of wandering into the room and stuff. And it was hard to like
take it seriously.
Take it seriously. One other thing, and that I would say is, again, that science and nature, just to call that this, for anybody that's interested in this film and wants to take an ecological perspective lens to understanding the film and kind of teasing out some of that science and nature, this is a great film for that. Because there is a lot of, there is that science versus nature, and ecology is I'm going to say a blossoming lens of scholastic study. And this film being from 1961 is an early one, I think, for studying that.
So I'm going to counter that by saying there's a much better 1961 Sword and Sandal film that does everything that this movie does, but better. Atlantis, the Lost Continent. We talked about that movie last year.
Yes.
If I'm going to compare the two films, if I recall, I wasn't too sold on the main character in Atlantis Lost Continent. I thought he was a little schlubby or something, but everything else is okay. Aside from that, all the stuff that this movie tries to accomplish, I think Atlantis Lost Continent does accomplish and does it better. And it's probably because way better budget, way better everything on it. But I think if you took Gordon Mitchell's strongman character out of this film and put him in that film, so then you have like this barbarian going around killing everyone in that Atlantis. I think you would have a pretty crazy but really different good movie. But they both came out in 1961.
And what's interesting about, thinking along that lines is that he would have finally had agency because he would have been a rebel. Yes, a terrorist or whatever, but he had a rebel, he had a group of people that were following him. Princess Mercedes could have been on the inside, feeding him information and things like that. And you would have had some intrigue as well. And that would have brought an extra kind of component to it that would have been interesting and something that you might not have had otherwise.
Basically, after the queen kills herself in this film, that Bella Cortez's character kind of takes on that role of, controlling the rebel and the Hercules character from her vantage point or something, and then falls in love with Paul. There's good stuff that could be happening in this film. It's just not there. So yeah, comparing it to Atlantis Lost Continent, probably a little bit lacking, a lot lacking, especially since they are the same year. I thought I had one more thing to say because we're at the very top of the hour, but I think that's about it. I mean, overall, it's surreal, it's weird, it's offbeat. There's a charm to it. I'm a bit more forgiving for the film than perhaps Michele is. It does have its faults. There's definitely a unfinished stone statue here that if you chisel a bit more, I think a better movie is hidden under here that could happen. And the fact that the kid dies at the end, we gotta point that out, is definitely very subversive.
Maybe. But we were both kind of like, the kid didn't make it after all that effort to save the kid. So,
which I'm for. I'm all for the subversion, and this movie is definitely full of subversions. But yeah, just my luck. There's a widescreen edition of this over here, and the kid's just like right there, but the camera just cropped in the American edition before it got over.
Could be. But that's our in-depth look and discussion of The Giant of Metropolis from 1960.
Wow. I wish it was earlier because I want to get an update on all the creative things that you guys are doing. So we'll do that now. But thank you. That was an excellent analysis. And you mined a lot of information from it.
Oh, yeah. So have you seen the film of Hercules?
Long time ago. But I have the Invaders Mills Creek edition, and 2 separate DVDs of Giants of Metropolis done by 2 different companies. So
yeah, there's the mighty Mills Creek logo right there.
I interviewed them years ago when they were coming out with these editions.
Oh, that's really fascinating.
Dig it up, republish it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I said, dig it up, republish it.
It was a Thor the Barbarian interview, and that all got flooded, so I don't know. But such is life.
But we will next month continue our exploration of Bella Cortez's filmography. I'm not sure which film we're going to watch. I think we've got 2 more, so I do remember which 2 they are.
We got Tar the Mighty, and then we've got
the Alibaba.
Yeah, Alibaba and the 7 Saccharine. So it'll be one of those.
Yeah.
Thor is called the son of Hercules on some of the DVD covers.
Oh, okay.
So it's a unaffiliated but kind of loosely connected non-canon son of Hercules film.
Okay. And it's also a Tarzan knockoff, if I recall as well. So there's some of interesting stuff there. So yeah, we'll keep diving into Bella Cortez's career and spotlighting her as best we can. So stay tuned next
That is
month.
awesome. She's agreed to a panel.
Oh,
So
cool.
we will be filming that. I'm going to recommend the people watch this episode because we will be covering Giant of Metropolis on one of the panels. And
Cool.
it'll be part of that whole sword and sandal, superheroes, strange science, and outer space. Very clunky title. I got to work on that. But be in that continuity. So how can people contact you? Where can they go to find out more about you? And what wonderful things are you working on now that we can look forward to in the future?
You want me to go first?
Sure, ladies.
Okay. So I have an author page on Amazon, so you can go there and see the books that I've either edited or chapters that I've contributed or books that I've contributed to. I'm currently working on a couple of essays, mummy related, as well as co-editing a book on the mummy universe, the Universal, specifically anchoring to the 1999 film with Brendan Fraser. We actually now have, we've signed to a publisher, and
Oh,
so
awesome.
yeah. So the book, we're still waiting for our writers to finish up, and then we'll, do our review, and then it'll go into peer review and so forth. So even though we're in 2024, almost mid 2024, the book will probably not be out until 2026. So something to look forward to. It promises to shape up really nicely and cover a lot of different themes. My co-editor, Sean Woodard, and I are very anxious to be working on this together. It's the first collaboration that we've done together. I don't do a whole lot of social media, but this guy does. So if you're ever looking to contact me or us, check out Nick's stuff.
Yeah, I'm on all the social medias. I'm pretty easy to find, but my hub is nickdiak.com. And from there is all my about pages and contact pages. And, we're also keeping my essays and podcasts and stuff. So that's the best way to get to me, and I guess Michele as well. All her podcast appearances are there too. My project is the Emmanuel book. First drafts are due next month, at the end of next month. So my summer is going to be greatly submerged into editing first passes on things, and also I got to get my stuff written. So
we've got a lot of Emmanuel films to watch.
Yes.
So that's kind of our near future,
very near future. But that's been the singular big task. I haven't cranked out as many miniature essays for other things as I would have liked, but it's all for a good big project. So that's going to be my life over the summer. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds very exciting. The book that I contributed to just came out. I received my copy. I don't know if
oh, it's too blurry.
Oh no. Oh shucks.
Still too blurry.
Yeah, it's like censoring the title.
Oh, it says weird at the top though.
Weird Time by Zontar Press.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I started doing something a little different. I've done it before in my writing, but not enough. I started taking some of my own like astral journeys and putting them down and polishing them up a little bit. So it's kind of like a reality show. It's based on true information, but I've written it better than it was, or I've taken 5 or 6 different trips and make them into one trip, just to tell a story. So they published it, and they want me to do more. So who knows? That might be what I'm doing for the next couple of years.
Awesome! Get that stuff out and on paper. Get it.
Yeah.
Get your voice out there. You got this.
Oh yeah, and so much to contribute wisdom-wise to readers and our listeners.
Well, thank you. I'll be 65 next week, so I guess I would count as an elder of some sort.
Well,
happy birthday in advance.
Yeah.
Very much, and I wish you well in all your endeavors. Thanks again for a very deep analysis of what sounds to be a not so deep film. And your review that you wrote in the beginning, that stands to be immortalized on paper and published, because you waxed poetical, and it was very your language was strong, and I think you should publish that.
All right.
You should put it on Wikipedia because there is no plot synopsis on
There
this.
you go. There you go. Get into with
They
those
need to update
Wikipedia articles.
Wikipedia because it doesn't have one.
A lot of these films have no plot synopsises out there, so gotta roll up the old sleeves and get them out there. Get them out there in my own book. There we go.
Well, and to just kind of do a quick shout out, Brian's Drive-In Theater, you know, he might actually have something written, so definitely check out him and his you know, online library of material too.
He's very awesome, and he's written a lot of things. I discovered his site like over a quarter of a century ago, and I thought it had been around for a while, and I didn't know how long it would be up because things appear and disappear on the internet all the time. So I remember whenever he updated the site, I print out the pages, and I had loose leaf binders with like his entire website
Oh, wow.
pages. And it turns out I was there from the very beginning. So he was initially somebody I called to interview about the Brian's Drive-In Theater. And then, you know, we got into conversations, and then he's been a regular ever since. So he's been on for years now.
Yeah, and isn't it, it's more than 25 years, isn't it?
Yeah, it was 25 recently. His
Yeah. Very cool. And I know he'll have the information on Gordon Mitchell. He's a very interesting character. You know, has a military you know, military career, as well as being a teacher, a bodybuilder, and of course, you know, went on to do films in Italy. So
and we have some people in the Sword and Sandal groups on Facebook that knew Gordon Mitchell, and they've occasionally tossed a few stories out there. So he was very well thought of.
yeah.
And anyway, I must go. The waits beckon. They're putting out their siren song, and I must answer it. Thanks again. Have a wonderful long weekend, and I look forward to our next conversation. And this will be up on YouTube sometime tomorrow. And
Awesome.
I'll send you links.
Oh, thank you very much, Hercules, and always thank you very much for this platform to have these discussions. It's keeps our brains active and sharp, but also in an entertaining and more armchair fashion as well. So thank you for that.
And have a great birthday and a great June. We'll see you in
Yes.
June.
Thank you. To see you in June, and it's my pleasure to provide you with the platform because you're incredibly awesome people.
Oh, thank you.
So,
Right
keep-
back at you.
Thank you. Be well and good night.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.